right, friends, let us talk about Metroid Dread. If you've been following me, no surprises, I really like this game. I actually ended up liking it more than I thought. It's as good as everyone's saying it is, and that just feels nice. So I've been marinating on it for a while, made the Game Ranks video, got some additional thoughts here. Specifically, the game's confidence. I think that's the whole thing that made me really stick with it. You know, I like Metroid games. I actually remember playing the original one on NES. I'm not actually that old, but like that was my first system, okay? But I remember thinking the music was incredible, the abilities were incredible, it was really hard. I didn't finish it until I grew up years later. The series is really fantastic. I really enjoyed the original Metroid Prime. I was also banging the drum a couple years ago for Samus Returns, which kind of led me to believe like this was a safe bet. If this was a stock, I would have bought it just because the framework that Samus Returns set up was really cool, but like with a bigger budget and like more focus, it could have been amazing. And that's exactly what Metroid Dread is, and I'm so happy. So with this game, I think like when I've been talking to people in real life, which is like 2 people, but like when I've spoken to people in real life about this game, I basically told them like by the first boss, you should be absolutely hooked. Like by the first boss, the game kind of demonstrates like its fun factor, its crazy budget, its really cool kind of like fan service moments, specifically in how I believe they make Samus so cool in this game, especially considering once again, she's a character that doesn't really speak, so they have to make her cool and interesting just through her actions, and they kind of just make her the space badass that she is. But it's down to like the way everything is framed, the way she moves, the way she acts, the way the action is shown. It's amazing. So you get a good dose of all of that by the first boss, and by then I was like, this is probably going to be one of my favorite games of the year. And then I kept playing, and yeah, it's just entertaining from beginning to end. I think it's well paced. I think there's enough depth in the maps for a ton of exploration, but there's also a ton of fun for room for mastery to do runs over and over again. Old Metroid fans pretty much really kind of dig that thing, and it seems like this game does a really good job at that. There's so many ways to kind of cruise through these maps and kind of break the sequence, so to speak. And in a lot of ways, and really boiled back down to the original games, it's like a power fantasy game where you're slowly getting more and more abilities and you're getting cooler. That's, of course, besides the whole Metroidvania thing, you know, the subgenre or really genre that these games set up. But there's the power fantasy thing where you're always getting cooler armor, you're getting better equipment, you're coming back to areas, you're able to do things better. You're also understanding the game more and being able to blast through it more. And it's a power fantasy game that trains you consistently throughout the game, you know what I mean? And I think like there's a lot of games in this genre now, but if that game trains you correctly, you can progress through the game smoothly and have a good time. So let's acknowledge the difficulty real quick, because I've talked to some people that are like, no, I don't really like a game where I get stuck in a room and I have to find an invisible block and shoot it, and then that's how I progress. I didn't have that issue. I don't know if it's like I've played enough of these games, or the game just set me up where to look for things, or where to really expect things, or maybe I just got abilities nice and early, but I moved through the game pretty well. I got stuck hardcore, like really like dead stop, like once or twice. But that is, of course, you know, different types of players, different types of tastes. But I didn't find myself stuck or hung up on the whole like, oh, that's what I was supposed to find. I was supposed to find that hidden wall. Like that stuff never bothered me. But there is the actual difficulty of the whole thing. The actual challenge, the intensity of the bosses, the brutality of some of it. In a lot of ways, I think some of it is attributed to the Joy-Con controllers. If you're playing this thing handheld, this game requires like every single finger and a lot of coordination, and you know, that can get a little bit of a pain in the ass. But in terms of the actual raw challenge, I was surprised, because I just want to like go on record here. You guys may have heard this before. I'm not like the best at video games. I am not like this pro gamer. I don't have thousands of billions of trophies. You know, I haven't like min-maxed every Dark Souls like a crazy person. Like I like games to play them. I'm not into like the masochism or really the competition of it. I've always, since a kid, just been along for the ride to escape, to experience stories, have fun. So I can get a little bit grumpy when a game is like oppressively hard. I can learn to understand it and understand why people like it and maybe embrace it, but sometimes it just pisses me off. But Metroid didn't, and I was able to play through it fairly, not like easily, but like I breezed through it, man. And that is not me, like so many people in comment sections, like they're like flexing, like that's not me flexing. I'm just trying to like have a conversation about, so difficulty is subjective, right? And I think we have to always account for the fact that, you know, everybody's different. Like I said, I don't play games always for like an insane challenge. Sometimes it's nice with certain games, but not really always my thing. There's people who are like that. They're the opposite people. There are people who have disabilities. There are accessibility issues with a lot of games where people literally just cannot. But going back to what I said before, I think what's really good about Metroid Dread is that I believe it trains you so well throughout that you're prepared. I never felt like my hand was held, but I also never felt completely up shit's creek. I think the game gave me the right tools. It kind of, with the way it introduces the bosses, the enemies that force you to learn certain tricks, I think all of those really just kind of set me up for success moving forward. And also, it's just a cool space adventure. You're like a lonely space bounty hunter, badass lady getting cooler abilities, exploring these uncharted areas that are all pretty varied and weird. And there's always spooky music, and it always feels all lonely and creepy, just like it did with those original games. Like, you know, like I'm thinking specifically like experiencing Metroid Prime for the first time, and they boiled that experience in so many ways throughout these games, and they did it again here, especially considering some of it feels so much larger. The cutscenes are crazier. The environments in scope in the backdrops look crazier. It's definitely a more expensive game, but it doesn't overdo it. Like, it tells a good Samus story. It still feels distinctly like a Metroid game. And I was just surprised how well paced it was. Again, a lot of that might come to me not getting stuck too much. But I think the game does a really good job of like, there's so many games that commit the sin of reusing things too much. I think this game gets away with reusing things just the right amount where it's not too annoying. It's a perfect way of scratching the itch, because just when it gets to the point of them reusing an enemy a little bit too much, you're at the point where you're like, all right, I know how to take out these suckers. Let's go. And that's really satisfying. And I think that's part of the hook. And just the way it's paced with the bosses and some of those other sub encounters, which I actually found some of those like sub bosses to be harder than the real bosses. But that stuff was the craziest. I actually was looking at this game thinking the Emmy encounters, like with the robots that pursue you, I thought those were going to be like the coolest, most intense, stressful parts of the game, and they are incredibly tense at the start. They are really cool, well-designed little areas that are incredibly challenging. Those were not even the highs of the high, like, of this game. So like if you saw the trailers, you saw Emmy and stuff like that, just know that that's just the beginning. If you can't tell, really like Metroid Dread. I know you've probably listened to a lot of dumb YouTubers also saying the same exact thing. It's probably going to be on my Game of the Year list. It's not like, it feels nice to feel confident about a game like that. I got a couple. We'll talk later in the year. But speaking of talking, I definitely want to hear what you think about Metroid Dread. It's been out for a minute now, so maybe you've played through it, or maybe you picked it up, or maybe you're still on the fence. I want to know what you're thinking. If you have played it, I want to know what you think about those bosses. I want to know what you think about some of the abilities, how they feel, the creativity in some of the design. Have you been getting stuck? Are you know, where do you fall in the difficulty, the level design, getting stuck? Like, where do you fall in that conversation? I don't know, man. This stuff is fun. I'm just having a good time. So let me know what you think. If you're having fun here, though, if you like what I'm trying to do here, just talk about stuff I love, clicking the like button's all you got to do. I would appreciate that. But I'm Jake Baldino. Thanks for watching. Subscribe because video games. Pizza's on me.